Hi, and welcome to Venture. We are so excited you're here today. If you're a senior, we're excited that we get to celebrate with you in this great momentous occasion in your life. And you know that the next 5 years of your lives are going to be some pretty pivotal years. Not everybody knows that, but you know that the next 5 years of your life are going to be big. And so we're here and we're in this series, You in 5 Years. And even if you're not a senior, we welcome you here. So we started out in this series and we asked this question in week 1, and we asked the question, who do I want to be in the next 5 years? And so whether that's maybe getting the promotion in the new job, or finally getting out of debt, or deepening that relationship, or growing in your time with Jesus, whatever that is, we learned that if we want to change in the next 5 years, we need to act now. Now is the time. Week 2, we asked a different question. We asked the question, why? Why is it so hard to change? You ever wonder that? Why is it so hard to change? And the reasoning for that, behind that, is inertia, that in times where there is an absence of crisis, we need to take a big, bold, courageous step and do something in order to get some forward motion. And then finally, last week, we asked the question, what? What am I going to do to change? And the answer was step by step by step, that over time, we can make a change in the next 5 years. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but we have a theme going here. Because if now is the time, and in times where there is no crisis, we need to move, and step by step over time makes a difference in the next 5 years, the question that I want to ask is, how are we going to make time to change in the next 5 years? Because here's the truth. Life in general is so busy that sometimes it feels like there is not time to make time to change. I mean, we barely have enough time just to exist, let alone add some new habits and skills on top of that. And so we're going to be addressing this question of, how do I make time? How do I make time in the next 5 years to begin change? And so we are going to start out. There are three steps that I want to address and how we can make time to change in the next 5 years. So we're just going to jump into this and start out with step 1. Step 1 is make your downtime different. Make your downtime different. So kind of keep that in your mind. And what I actually want to do is I want to take a moment, because we're talking about time. I want to make a timeline of a standard day. So I'm actually going to draw this out, and it'll pop up on the screen there. But let's say we have a standard day, and technically a day begins and it ends with 12 a.m. Okay, 11:59 on the other side, but it's 12 a.m. And I mean, I know everybody's schedule is different. Maybe you work at night, you sleep during the day. Maybe you were like a really late night owl or a really early morning bird. But we're just kind of work this out if it's as a standard day, and then you apply it as needed. So let's say we wake up at 6 in the morning, go to work at 8. Let's say we're at work until about 5:30. And then we'll say 8 hours of sleep. So 8 hours of sleep is 10 o'clock. So this is kind of like what a standard day looks like right here. Now, what's interesting is that most of our effort and most of our energy and most of our focus goes into this period of our day, about 8 to 5:30. And the reason for that is because this is when life is the craziest. This is when we work. This is when we go to school. This is when we run our errands. This is when the Secretary of State is open and the post office is open, and when we go to the doctors and when we go to the dentist. This is the section of time where we do life. And so for the purpose of our discussion this morning, this right here is dead time. It's dead time. The likelihood that your time to change in the next 5 years is going to happen here is pretty low. I mean, it can occur, but the truth is that anytime we get space in this section of our day, we usually fill it up with something else. So there's almost never time during this part of our day to make those changes that we are looking to make in the next 5 years. Now, I'm actually going to extend this out. We're going to go to 8. Because I know that sometimes people have like nightly soccer games or nightly social events, or if you have weird hobbies, like you like sheep like me, maybe you're hanging out with a sheep herder until 8 p.m. I don't know, everybody's different. But let's say you don't get home until 8 p.m. And so here's what we have. We have these two 2-hour sections of time, right here and right here. And I don't know what you call it, but I call it my downtime. This is my downtime. And what do you do in downtime? Well, number one, you usually do nothing in your downtime, because the purpose of downtime is to decompress and to de-stress and to relax from the day. You know, you watch a show or you play a game. You don't do anything in downtime. Like, that's how downtime works. But for what we are talking about here today, the most pivotal moments of our day happens in these two-hour sections. We're going to call them mornings and evenings. In these 2-hour sections where we are going to get the most bang for our buck as we make changes in the next 5 years. So we need to make our downtime different. We need to begin to leverage the mornings and evenings, because it's not going to happen when life is craziest, and it's definitely not going to happen while we're unconscious. So we need to start leveraging these evenings and mornings. And my friend Jesus actually did this. So I'm excited to talk about him today. So my friend Jesus did this, and we can actually see it in this verse in Mark chapter 1. It says, before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and he went out to an isolated place to pray. Later, Simon and the others went out to find him. And when they found him, they said, everyone is looking for you. Because here's what happened. Jesus got up. Jesus is leveraging his mornings. He gets up before the sun has even risen, because he knows that as soon as that peaks over the horizon, somebody's going to be looking for him, and then he's going to have to go out, and he's going to start doing his miracles, and he's going to start doing his teachings, and he's going to go to the temple, and life is going to get crazy. So Jesus leverages his mornings. There's actually several verses where he leverages his evenings as well. But listen, if we make our downtime different, if we begin to leverage those morning and evening times and we anchor our day there, it is going to radically change our next 5 years. I was talking to a high school senior, and he said that he reads his Bible in the mornings and he prays in the evenings. And it is that time, specifically when he takes that time to thank God, that completely changes his outlook on the rest of the day. Completely changes his outlook. I actually started leveraging my evenings and mornings a couple years ago. No, it was more than a couple. It was a while back. And I am what you would call a dreamer in many different ways, but in this, we're talking about when I was sleeping. I dream a lot when I'm sleeping. And so I went through this period of time a ways back where I was, for a solid month, I was having nightmares every night. And I could not figure out what was happening. I couldn't figure out how to change it. And I knew that something had to give. And so I started leveraging my evenings and leveraging my mornings. And that's when I would read my Bible, when I would talk to Jesus, and I would listen to Christian music. And here's what happened. This was so cool, is that I got so used to spending that evening and morning time that in my dream, I started quoting scripture in my dream, and then I would tell the bad guys to leave in the name of Jesus, coolest dream ever, right? It was very cool. And then as I was waking up in that half state of half unconsciousness, instead of thinking about that nightmare, I would be thinking about and start singing that worship song that I had listened to the night before. It was crazy. And let me tell you, evenings and mornings changed my nightmare life, radically changed it. And if we make our downtime different, if we start to leverage our evenings and mornings, it can change your nightmare life. And not just the dream version, maybe your life is a nightmare, and it can change your nightmare life. So if we're going to make time to change in the next 5 years, step one, we need to make our downtime different. But there's a second step. Step two, we need to make quality time. Now, quality time is kind of an overused term, but I want you to think about this. So let's say that we make our downtime different, and we set aside those evenings and we set aside those mornings. So here's a day. We go to work, we go to school, we hang out with the sheep herder, we get back at 8, and then we're like, okay, here's my 2 hours, right? Here's my 2 hours. And then the sheep herder calls, and you're talking about mutton for 1.5 hours of your downtime, right? And then somebody else comes in and they're like, listen, I need you to come and I need you to help me grab my file. And so we get to the end of the evening and we're like, well, that is shot. That's not happening. But I still have my mornings. So then we go to sleep and we wake up in the morning. But then somebody calls us about work and then we have to address that call. And then by the time we are done and our evenings and mornings are finished, we have accomplished nothing. Nothing has been developed. Nothing has been deepened. Nothing good has come of our downtime. And here's what can happen, and I've seen this, is that people will set aside their downtime. They'll set aside their evenings and mornings. And then when they find out that nothing happened, they get discouraged and they quit. Have you ever experienced that? Where you set aside the time and it felt like nothing happened? So you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to do that anymore. So if we are going to make time that will change in the next 5 years, we need to make our downtime different, but we also need to make our downtime quality time. There are a number of ways to do this, but I just want to talk about one of them here this morning, and that is this idea of accessibility. We need to become inaccessible to have quality time, and my friend Jesus also modeled this. I am very excited to talk about Jesus this morning. So my friend Jesus also modeled this, and he honestly, if there's anybody who did not have time, it was Jesus. Like, people were following him everywhere. There's this one story where he gets in a boat and goes across a lake to escape people, and they go around the lake and meet him on the other side. Like, he was like the celebrity of his time with many stalkers. But this is what it says. So it says in this verse, but despite Jesus' instructions, because he had just performed a miracle and then told the guy, don't tell anybody, maybe because he already didn't have time. And it says, but despite Jesus' instructions, the report of his power spread even faster. And vast crowds came to hear him preach and to be healed of their diseases. But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. He often withdrew to be by himself, to be isolated. He would get in a boat and go out on the lake, or he would go up in the mountains. He would go to isolated places to pray. We actually saw that even in our previous verse that we read. And Jesus made it a point to be inaccessible. He made it a point to be inaccessible. Now, here's what we can think, is we can think, man, I can't be inaccessible in my downtime. I can't. I need to have my phone on me. What if I get a work call? What if I get a school call? What if I need to send a picture to somebody? I don't know. But let me just ask you this. Do you think that people need you more than they need Jesus? Because here's what happened with Jesus. People who were sick needed him to heal them of their diseases. People who were demon-possessed needed Jesus to cast out their demons. People were clamoring for Jesus. They were clamoring for Jesus. He was that good. And yet he made himself inaccessible. Are you that good? Turn to your neighbor and say, you are not that good. If Jesus, who people definitely needed more than they need me, can be inaccessible, then I believe that we can be inaccessible in that downtime, because if we just set aside time and we don't make it quality time, it's really not going to do much for us. So if we are going to make time to change in the next 5 years, we need to do two things. We need to make our downtime different, and we need to make quality time. I actually had a discussion with my grandfather this past weekend, and he asked what I was talking about, and I told him I was talking about time. And so he started talking about his life, and I went and grabbed my phone. I'm like, Grandpa, I'm taking notes. I'm probably going to quote you. You don't really have a choice. And so I'm taking notes on what he's saying. And he said this. He said, first, I have my time with Jesus in the mornings, leveraging the mornings. And he said, but as soon as I turn on the TV or I take a call because I've become accessible, my time with Jesus just goes out the window. Doesn't happen. It's gone. It's gone. And then he said this, and he said, and here's what occurs. I take that time with Jesus, and I push it back, and I push it back, and I say, I'll get to it tomorrow, I'll get to it tomorrow. But at my age, pretty soon, tomorrow I'll be with him. And I was like, man, Grandpa, writing it down. But if we want to make time, because here's the thing about time. I mean, we know logically that it's going to pass us by. We know logically that it goes fast. But pretty soon, if we do not intentionally make time in our downtime and quality time, this 5 years is going to turn into the next 5 years and turn into the next 5 years, and then tomorrow we'll be with him. So remember step 1 and 2. Remember step 1 and 2. But there's also this third step that I want to talk about. Because I realize, and I want to look at our timeline again really quick. I realize that we can leverage our mornings, we can leverage our evenings, we can become inaccessible, we can plan and set aside and make all the time we want, but sometimes life gets crazy, and then our day looks like this. You ever have days like that? What do you do then? You know, I thought it was, well, it's funny now. It wasn't really at the time. I don't know if you can tell. I have a cold. And I got a cold this past weekend. And I had set aside time, Monday. This specifically happened on Monday. I had set aside time to be inaccessible to study for this weekend. And then I had planned to have my evenings and mornings so I could just really take in the Word of God and be prepared. And then I got sick. And on Monday, I sat down for my study time, and I fell asleep, and I slept through the whole chunk of it. Like, it was gone. And then I go to my evenings, and my head hurt so much. There was a point where I was, like, squinting out of one eye to read the Bible. And then I'm like, God, we just need to talk in my head. We need to talk in my head. This just hurts too much. It's too painful. What do you do? What do you do when you get sick? Or something happens with your kids, or you're working 3 jobs, and then you have 2 more on top of that, and you are just praying that you can stay alive for the day. What do you do when tragedy happens? And there is not time to make time. And to that, I would like to propose step 3. Sometimes you have to make do with the time that you have. You have to make do. And maybe it's not going to look all beautiful like your 2-hour mornings or your 2-hour evenings, and maybe it's not going to be everything that you dreamed it would be, but you have to do something. You have to do something. And Jesus modeled this for us as well. He had a horrible day. He found out in the morning that his cousin had been murdered. And he actually tried to make time. It says he tried to go off alone, and the people stopped him. And then he has to feed this large group of people, and they're so excited that they try to force him to be king, so he has to run away from them. And then later, his followers, his friends go out on the water, and they almost die, and he has to save them. And this is just a day that is followed by grief and betrayal and disappointment. And in the middle of the day, Jesus makes do. This is what he did. It says this: immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake. Well, he sent the people home. And after sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. So number 1, inaccessible. Number 2, he was leveraging his evenings. But what was very cool about this is that right after this moment is when he does his big walk on water miracle, right? And when I read this, I was like, here's what happened. Jesus decides to do something and to make time, even if he has to climb a mountain, even if he has to walk on water to catch up with his friends, he is going to do something. Sometimes we got to make do. Sometimes we got to make do with the time that we have. I was talking to a mother with children. She has children. She has a side job. And she says, sometimes on those crazy days, what I do is I have my YouVersion Bible app on my phone with the verse of the day that pops up so that I know if life goes crazy, I have something. I'm doing something. Or I'm going and I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to Christian music and I'm doing something. I'm meditating on something. And I was talking to a parent, and they said they when their newborn was was born, and it was one of those newborns that makes you wonder if you want to have a second child because they're waking up all the time, right? Parents, you know this. And they said when their newborn was born, they decided that every time they got up with their newborn, they were going to pray. And they said that was some of the best prayer time of my life because that baby got up all the time. And sometimes you got to make do, and they were making do. And sometimes we have to make do with the time that we have. And there's a number of ways that we can do this. I mean, especially with technology nowadays. If you're working on your finances or work skills or relationships, whatever, there's audiobooks. There's all sorts of different options. But I've put together a list specifically for spiritual growth. Ways to make do with the time that we have. And I encourage you to take a picture of this, write it down, whatever it is. These are just some thoughts, and there are many other options. Number one, the YouVersion Bible app. It's really easy. You download it on your phone off of the App Store, and you can have that verse up there. So you're doing something. You're doing something when life is crazy. I listen to 89.7 Christian music on the radio, but there's iTunes, there's YouTube, any number of things. We have an audio podcast here at Venture that's separate from the Sunday podcast, but is an audio podcast called What Now with Anna and Eric. It is myself and Eric who was hosting earlier, and has some witty banter, his words, not mine, and Sunday recap. And then what we really do is we go into what now, what are our next steps, how can we figure out how to grow spiritually. And then finally, a guided prayer that we partnered with the Green Room Church for you. And you can actually go to their website there, and also the link to What Now with Anna and Eric and the guided prayer is on the Venture Facebook page. But this guided prayer is a great option, for those days when they're crazy and you don't even know what to pray, let alone when you're going to do it. And so this is a great option. These are great ways to make do, because sometimes you got to make do. But ultimately, if we want to change in the next 5 years, we need to make time. We need to make our downtime different. We need to make quality time. And sometimes we need to just do something to make do with the time that we have. As we're wrapping up, I want to pray for everybody. But before that, if you're here today and you don't know Jesus, I want to encourage you that of everything that in the world that you could spend time doing, time with Jesus will give you more joy and more fulfillment and more courage than anything you could do in your entire life. And if you want to be friends with that guy, I want to give you the opportunity to pray with me here this morning. Jesus, I need you. I need to change from who I am right now. And I know that you died for me to give me more time and time with you. And I ask you to come into my life. And I accept you. Thank you. Amen. And then really quickly, I just want to pray for all of us. God, thank you that you have given us the time that we have. Thank you that you sent your son who had his time cut short so that we could be with you. And God, I just ask that you will give all of us here the courage sometimes and the strength to make time in our lives to change in the next 5 years and to make time in our lives for you. We thank you for all that you have done. Amen. So my challenge of the week to you guys, make time. Do whatever you got to do. Do whatever you got to do, but make time. Do something. And I believe in you. I know that you can do it. And Scott Crownover, who's actually on our teaching team, is going to come out on the stage because we have made time here this morning. And he's going to go through the guided prayer that I talked about earlier. It's going to be super exciting, so be excited to spend time with Jesus.
That message by Anna is one of the best teachings that I've heard on making time. So practical, powerful. You know, a few years ago, I guess the best way I would put it is I was broken. I was a broken human being in more than ways than one. I was empty. I would call it even a sickness, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And I realized I had gotten to this place slowly but surely because I had forgotten to anchor my days. I had forgotten to anchor my mornings and my evenings with God. And I tried to do it all on my own. And I forgot that He was there with me. What I want to do today is I want to share with you, and we're going to go through this, a prayer that changed my life. It was a prayer that was introduced to me by a Jesuit priest when I needed it the most. The prayer is called the Daily Examen. It's a prayer that's designed to be prayed either at the beginning of your day, the end of your day. You can anchor your days in it. It's got 5 parts: stillness, gratitude, reflection, forgiveness, and hopefulness. And at the Green Room, the church that I pastor, we do this prayer continually because it is so important and it puts us into the presence of the living God. You know, God is here right now. You know that, right? I mean, some of you are just kind of here and you're just sitting here and just like, okay, this is cool. But if you realize that God was here, that He was here before you showed up, and that He'd been waiting for you to get here, if you realize that the presence of the living God was surrounding you right now, how different would you think of this moment? But that's the reality of it. God is here right now as we speak. The living God that created everything, including you, is right here, right now. And what this prayer does is allow us to see Him, the reality of His presence right now. And so what we're going to do this together. You don't have to worry about knowing those 5 steps. You're like, oh, I forgot the second one. Don't worry about it. I'm going to guide you through it. All you have to do is be open for God to work. This is a little different than what Venture usually does, but it's okay. You got out of bed. You did whatever you had to get here so you could experience God, and this is what we're going to do right now, to experience the presence of the living God that is surrounding you. All right? And so what I'm going to ask if we could do is if we could lower the lights a little bit. And I'm going to also ask if we could, put some music, just a little low-level music. Music is amazing, isn't it? It opens up our heart. It opens up our minds so that we can experience the presence, the reality of the presence of God. And what I'll ask you to do, the only thing that I would really ask you to do as far as physically right now, and I'm going to ask a little bit later on, but it's just to open up yourself and your heart to what God has to say. You know, our bodies, our physical bodies and our spiritual, they're really married to each other. So whatever you have to do to set yourself, wherever you're seated, in a space that says, God, I am ready. I am ready and I am open to experience your power, your peace, and your presence right now, because I know you're here and I want to hear you. All right? So let's begin. If you want to keep your eyes open, if you want to close your eyes, it's up to you. Let's start. We're going to start with stillness. And we're going to start by breathing. Just breathe. Breathe in. Breathe out. You've been breathing this whole time, but you didn't even think about it. But think about it. It's what's keeping you alive. The same word for breath is the same word for spirit in the Bible. So breathe in everything that is God and breathe out everything that is not God. Breathe in everything that is good, that is right, that is pure, that is beautiful, that is lovely. And breathe out everything that is not. Breathe out your shame, breathe out your guilt, breathe out your fear. Breathe out your bitterness, your regret. Breathe it out. Breathe everything that is God and breathe out everything that's not. Let go right now as you're breathing. Let go of everything and anything that is keeping you from experiencing the unconditional love and presence of the living God. I want you to imagine that the gentle light that is falling on your shoulders is the light of your loving God falling upon you. Just allow the light of God's love to pour over your shoulders. Don't stop it. Just allow it to fall. Just sit in it. Just bask in it. Accept it. I want you to breathe. Breathe in and breathe out. Allow yourself to be in this present moment with God right now. Now I want to move us to a sense of gratitude. Thank God for bringing you here today, at this moment, right now, to experience Him. Just thank Him for that. Thank God for everybody that has been with you on your faith journey, leading you up to this moment. Those who have been patient, those who have had the strength to carry you and to guide you and to love you and to lead you here. Thank God for all of them. Thank God for those people in your life that you would willingly lay down your life for. And thank God for those people that would willingly lay down their life for you, no questions asked, because they love you so much. Thank God for them. Thank Him for the breath that's going in and out of your lungs, knowing that one day it will cease. It will not be there anymore, and that every one of those breaths is being ordained by God. Thank Him for it. Now let's go to a time of reflection. I want you to think back over your morning. Maybe even think back over the day before. I want you to think about all your emotions and all your feelings and all your attitudes and all your thoughts. What had been going on this morning? What was going on the day before? What was going on in your heart? What was going on in your mind? Allow all those emotions and those feelings and those attitudes, those thoughts, just allow them to bubble to the surface. It doesn't matter if it makes any sense. It doesn't matter if you can piece it together. It doesn't matter. Just allow it to come to the surface. What surprised you? What made you mad? What frightened you? What got on your nerves? What do you regret? What brought you joy? What was it? Just allow it all to come to the surface. Some of you right now can think of a moment, something that you said, something that you did that just automatically comes to the surface. Just think about that. This is the time where we're just honest with God. Here it is, God. Here it is. Here it is. Now, what I want you to do right now is I want you to move into a forgiveness stage. So I want you to think one of those emotions or those feelings, those attitudes, those thoughts that you've been thinking, and I want you to think of the one that was not in line with the heart of God. Which one just did not fit with what you know God would want for you? And maybe for you, it's the one that's over in the corner, in the dark places of the corner, and it doesn't want to be seen. You take that. You look at that one, you pull it into the light, and you say, Father, Lord, here it is. Here it is. Here's that thing that has been going on in my mind and my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions that I don't like. It's not in line with you, but here it is because it's going to lose its power when I bring it into the light. Here it is, Father. And I know that you love me, so it's okay to bring it out. Just bring it out. Now, I want you just for the next few moments, I want you to talk to God about that. Just talk to God about it. Just be honest with him. What's behind it? What's the reason for it? And just be honest, just for these next few moments. Now, I want you to imagine that you're looking in the eyes of Jesus. I want you to imagine that Jesus is staring at you. You are right there looking in the eyes of Jesus as like a best friend. Someone who knows every part of you, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, and he's looking at you right now in the eyes of love. What is Jesus saying to you? What does he want to say to you right now? Allow him to speak. And now what I want you to do is I want you to take your hand, physical hand, your right hand, and I want you to put it over your heart. Feel the heartbeat, knowing that God put it there and that he loves you. And I want to take your other hand, take the other hand and put it over the hand that's on your heart. Now imagine the hand that is on the hand that's on your heart is the hand of Jesus. And imagine that hand melting everything away, everything that is keeping you from his love and his grace and his forgiveness, all the barriers, all the walls that you have placed up, he is melting it all away. Now imagine Jesus saying to you as he has his hand on your hand, I know. I know what's going through your life. Thank you for telling me. I love you. You have no idea how much I love you. Imagine that hand melting away everything that has been keeping you from him. And at this moment, you just tell him back, I love you too. I love you too. And now we're going to end with a sense of hopefulness. Let's focus back on our breathing if we could. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And we're going to look for hope for the next day. Think about what you need to remember from this moment. What is it that God has been speaking to you about? What do you need to remember? Is it a thought? Is it a word? Is it an emotion? Did Jesus say something to you that you need to remember right now? Hold on to it. Promise yourself you're going to remember that. Promise yourself that you're going to remember this moment right now that you've been in the presence of the living God and you've experienced Jesus' voice, his love and his peace and his presence. And now ask God what you need from him to equip you for the coming day. And believe that he will give that to you because he loves you. And now let's just thank him once again for his love. Thank him for his presence. Thank him for his peace. Just thank him. Amen. As you begin to open up your eyes or get settled in again, I'm going to ask the band to come on out. Don't forget this moment. This is a prayer that you can do at the beginning or the end of your day. You can do it any time of your day, but don't forget this moment. Remember how God has been surrounding you. This song is going to really solidify what we've been talking about this whole morning. About a God who surrounds us and loves us throughout our day. And so as you hear this song, consider it a prayer